this is a bit of a different video. My first ever video, which is 10 videos ago, was a sit down video, and then after that I just really enjoyed picking up my camera and taking me to the theatre and stuff. But I thought it would be fun to do a sit down chat about the books that I read in February. So for those who don't know, I adore books. I studied literature at university and grew up carrying a book with me wherever I went. The books that I read in February, and there are a few that I read on my Kindle, so I don't have actual copies, and one of the books that I read I lent to my mum, so I'm missing that one, but we're just gonna go with it. I'm gonna do this in order as well. So I use an app called Goodreads to track the books that I want to read, the books that I have yet to buy, and then the books that I read. So I'm gonna go through them in order and just chat through them. So the first one that I read was Hamlet by Maggie O'Farrell, and everyone was talking about this book. When I went into Waterstones to buy it, the guy at Waterstones was like, it's really good, like you'll enjoy it. I did not enjoy it. I will be completely honest. I really struggled to get through this book. It took me a week to get through this book, and usually I wasn't very busy that week as well. Usually a book, how many pages is this? Like 370 pages. It wouldn't really take me this long to read a book like this, particularly if it's good. I'd sail through it. I thought the book would be about Hamlet, and it's not really. The book kind of goes back and forth between the present, which is Hamlet's storyline of him finding his sister really ill, searching for help, there's no one around, and it bounces between that back to his parents' storylines, but like separate. So like his mother and her story, and then the father and his, who's William Shakespeare, and his story and how they met, how their lines crossed, and then the evolution of that relationship. And I just thought that there was so much unnecessary fluff in this book. There is always a purpose behind a description of a place or something that contributes to the reader's experience. And I just found that with this book, I was reading it and I was like, what is the point of this? Can we just get to what's happening? And it was just really frustrating, and I did not enjoy it at all. I would not recommend. Out of 5 stars, I think I would give this a 1 or a 0.5 if that's a thing. I just really didn't enjoy it at all. Anyways, that was Hamlet. And I was really annoyed because I was on like a reading high before I read Hamlet, and then I was like, oh no, is this going to send me into a bit of a reading slump? Slump? You know what I mean. So I don't know, I just really didn't enjoy that book. My mum read it and she really enjoyed it, but I don't know if I just missed something, but I didn't like it. The next book I read was Daisy Jones and the Six, and I absolutely adored this book. I thought it was fantastic. I think I gave it 5 stars on Goodreads. I just really enjoyed this book, and I was a bit worried when I picked it up because I'm just going to show you. That's really bright. There we go. But that is how the entire book is written. So it's every single character in this book, and there are probably around, I want to say like maybe 12-ish, like around that number. You hear from every single character their point of view when something happens. And I think that that's really interesting. And the way that it's written is each character truly has their own voice. So you get very attached to essentially everyone, and even characters that are a little bit annoying and antagonistic, you really feel for them because you're hearing their thoughts and their opinions about an event or how something has affected them. And I thought it was really powerful. I've never read a book that's been written like this. It's written by Taylor Jenkins Reid, who also wrote The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo and another book that I think I've read that I cannot remember right now. But I just really enjoyed this. So it is the story primarily of Daisy Jones and the head of the band The Six, Billy Hughes? Billy, we're just going to go with Billy. And there is a lot of, this book deals with a lot of themes and a lot of issues. There's a lot of drugs and addiction and sex, and it also deals with mental health issues and the pressures of being famous and being out in the public and growing up in the public eye as well. Daisy Jones is very young, and she's very like stereotypically beautiful, and she gets a lot of attention at a very young age, and she feels like she has something to prove because everyone's always told her that she's stunning, and she kind of just sails through life and she feels like she has to prove herself. She doesn't want anything handed to her in terms of what she really wants to do. So she loves music, wants to write songs, and she doesn't want anyone to do her any favors. She wants to put her music out there because it's good, not because of anything else. I really enjoyed this. I thought the ending was, I'm not going to give anything away, but I thought the ending was really beautiful. I know that that's really controversial if you've read the book, but I really enjoyed the ending, and I thought to me, I wasn't expecting it to end that way, and I really appreciated that the author maintained the kind of, like, she stayed true to those characters and what was really important to them throughout the book, even though that may not have given everyone the ending that they had anticipated or that they wanted. So I really recommend this one. I really enjoyed it, and I sailed through it. I think I read it in like 3 or 4 days. My camera is flashing, so I'm gonna have to stop. Okay, we're back. Okay, the next one that I read was The Transgender Issue, An Argument for Justice by Sean Fay. I picked this up because it came very recommended to me on Twitter. I'd seen various people talk about it. I think someone I followed on Instagram said that this was a really good book to just learn about issues that transgender people can face, and to read through some experiences of the transgender community, like individuals that have shared their experience. And I thought this book was brilliant. It's quite a dense read, like there is a lot of information in there. What's great about this is that the author is English, I guess, as in like the experiences that are shared are people who live in England. So things like issues with the NHS, the National Health Service, issues at schools. I really recommend this. It's a relatively new book as well. I think it came 2021, yeah, so very new one, but I really recommend. Also, they don't have it in paperback, and I have this complex with hardbacks because I take books with me everywhere I go. So if I need to take a bus, if I need to take the tube, if I'm going somewhere, I'll always take a book with me. And it's just a bit of a faff to take a hardcover book with you because it gets ruined when you shove it in your rucksack, and it's just bigger, it's heavier, it's like more bulk. So I always go for paperbacks, and I don't own my home, so there is a limited space in my flat for books, and that's already overflowing. So hardbacks make it a little bit more difficult, given that I don't have that much space for books to house my books, which again is why I've turned to this Kindle, which I have a complex with, but we'll get to that. So I really, really do recommend this book. And then so this is, I'm gonna hold up my hand and say I made a mistake. My hand is really red. That's a bit worrying. I think my watch strap is too tight. Anyways, we'll sort that out later. I ordered a book that I thought was about the theatre, which it is, but it turns out, and I didn't know this, that it is a children's book. Now, I read it, irrespective of it being a children's book. I read it in a day. It was very easy to get through. It was really fun. It reminded me of being a kid again. This is exactly the sort of book that I would pick up if I was a child. So it's Into the Spotlight by Carrie Hope Fletcher. I have never read a Carrie Hope Fletcher book, although I have pre-ordered her new one, which is due to come out, I think in April, called The Kiss. And I love Carrie Hope Fletcher. She's my favorite, one of my favorite kind of West End actresses. I think she's brilliant. I've seen her in Cinderella twice. And I'm going to her concert next year, which I'm very excited about. But I wanted to, she's an author as well, which I thought was super, super cool. And I was like, well, that's really cool. Like, I adore musical theatre. It's not career for me, but I adore musical theatre and I love books. And here is someone else who adores musical theatre to the extent that it is their career and loves books to the extent that they are an author. So I thought it was really cool that she was an author. So I wanted to pick up one of her books, and I accidentally picked up her children's book. It was really great. Like, I'm not gonna really go into much detail. It was really fun. It was about the theatre. She writes really well. It was very easy to get through. It was interesting. Although it was a children's book, I was like, I definitely want to keep reading because I really want to find out what happens. And what I really like about authors who write about, like, their stories take place in London, which this book does, is they make references to things, like in this book, the theatre, and like certain corners, certain streets that I obviously know because I'm from London, I live in London. And I don't know, like, it just makes the experience a little bit more enjoyable because I'm like, I know that street, like I can picture it, or like I was there the other day. So I always like reading stories that are set in London for that reason. I just feel a little bit more connected to the characters and the story and invested in where the story is going as well. But I really enjoyed this. I think I gave it 3 stars as an adult, but this is definitely a book that I would really enjoy if I were 8. I'll go through, it's the one that I lent to my mum, and I'll put a photo here of the book cover. And it's Verity by Colleen Hoover. And this is the 4th, I think it's the 3rd Colleen Hoover book that I've read. I've read It Ends With Us and Reminders of Him, both of which I really, really, really enjoyed. I couldn't put those books down. I think I read them in 2 days and just like had my nose in the book for those 2 days and didn't really communicate with anyone else. But Verity, I was a bit skeptical to read because I was told that it was a little bit scary and suspenseful and creepy, and I am scared of everything, and I don't do very well with, I don't watch horror films. The scary movie films, Scary Movie 1, Scary Movie 2, that are meant to be really funny, I find terrifying. So I stay away from like that sort of genre of books. With that being said, I have read The Guest List and a book called The Silent Patient, which fall in that creepy, suspenseful genre, and I loved both of those. So I just get really stressed when reading them, but I do really enjoy them. So I read Verity, and I was stressed for the 3 days or so that I was reading Verity. I was very, very, very stressed and on edge. However, I really, really enjoyed it. I just think Colleen Hoover is one of those authors who writes in a way that it's just so easy to sail through her books. Like, you pick it up and then before you know it, you've read 150 pages and you're like, where has the time gone? And I really enjoy that. However, Cassidy and I read this, I think we read it like a week apart, and she said to me, I have some issues with that book, but I want to wait for you to read it so we can discuss. I was like, cool. Read it, and then we discussed. And our issue with it is the ending, which I'm not going to give away, but we felt like the ending was kind of like a cheap way to end the story. It was kind of like a cop-out, like the author couldn't think of anything better, so they just ended it that way to end the book. I love her book, so like I think I'm a fan. I was just a little bit disappointed with the ending of Verity, but I am very happy that I read it, and I really, really enjoyed reading it. So the next one on my list is on my Kindle. Now, I'm gonna chat a little bit about the issue that I have with my Kindle. So I will always rather read a book and hold a book. I love the smell of books. Nothing will ever compare to holding a book and reading an actual physical copy of a book. However, I said before, I do not own my home yet, which means I have to move around. If I move flats, I have to move around with my books, and that there is also a limited space in my flat to house my books. So I can't, and I go through them relatively quickly, I can't continue buying physical copies of all my books because I will very quickly run out of space, and I've already moved a lot of my books to my parents' house and they're just sitting there. And sometimes when you're commuting or you're traveling, it's just easier to have something on a very small, light device that you can take with you, and if you finish that, you can read another one. You don't have to have two massive, heavy books with you. So I'm trying to get more books on my Kindle and read on my Kindle. I don't hate it, but I don't love it. And the next book that I read was a very short book. I think it was 120, 130 pages. I read it in like half a day. I read it while commuting. And it's called All My Friends Are Superheroes, and it's by Andrew Kaufman. Andrew Kaufman. And I've never read a book like this. It was really, really, really fun and funny and just easy to read, but very, like, I didn't want to put it down because I just wanted to figure out what happened to the characters. So the main character, Tom, is the only character in the story who's not a superhero. All his friends, including his wife, are superheroes, and they have names of certain traits, characteristics, things that make them a superhero. So his wife is the perfectionist, and there is the hypnotist, and various other characters. And each character has, like, a portion of the book is dedicated to going through each character and like why that character is a superhero and how that ties into Tom's storyline. But the book, at the very start of the book, I was a bit confused because it doesn't really make sense. You're told that Tom is at an airport, or Tom's telling you he's at an airport with his wife, but his wife can't see him, although he's sitting next to her. So I was like, okay, this is really weird. Perfectionist can't see Tom, and that's why Tom is invisible. So he's invisible throughout the entire book. I'm not going to tell you how it ends, but the entire book is going through these different characters, how they tie into Tom and the perfectionist storyline, and then also Tom desperately trying to find a way to make himself visible to his wife before they land. So he has like a deadline, like if she doesn't see him before they land, it's over. Oh, I forgot to say, All My Friends Are Superheroes. I would give that 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. I would recommend that to a friend. I didn't love this. I would give it between 2 and 3 stars. Now, what I loved about Nicholas Sparks' book when I was a teenager, and granted, I haven't read one of his books in maybe like 6 years, 7 years, something like that. But what I loved about Nicholas Sparks' books is I'd pick it up and I wouldn't be able to put it down until I finished it. And I did not get that from this. It took me a few days to get into it, and I only got into it 3/4 into the book, which is problematic for me. So it took a while to get into this, and I was a little lost because the way that this book is written is you follow a storyline, and then that storyline seems to end quite abruptly, and then another storyline is picked up, and then those two storylines come together in a way that, to me, didn't feel super organic. So I didn't love it. I thought the ending was a Nicholas Sparksy ending, and that the ending for the most part felt authentic to the stories and to the, it felt authentic to the story and to the characters, but I didn't love it. Like, I wouldn't recommend this to a friend. And then the last one that I read that I listened to was another Carrie Hope Fletcher book, and this was her first book, called All I Know Now, and I think she published that like 8 years ago, a while ago, and I really enjoyed this book. It is essentially her going through various experiences in her life, going through questions that she gets asked a lot, and sharing her thoughts, her views, lessons that she's learned throughout her young life. And I really enjoyed that. I thought it was great. I think, for those of you that don't know, like I said before, Carrie Hope Fletcher is a West End actress. She's a singer. She is massive on YouTube as well, and she's also a writer. And she has been doing theatre since she was a tiny child. So she was in the original casts for Chitty Chitty Bang Bang in the West End and Mary Poppins in the West End, and she played little Eponine in Les Mis when she was a child, and then she went on to play Eponine in Les Mis for almost 3 years, I think, when she was like between 20 and 24. And yeah, so like, she's grown up in the public eye, and she was bullied as a child and never really fit in, and I resonate with that as well. So there were things that she spoke about that, although I felt like, although I was older than her intended audience for that book, which was slightly younger people, teenagers, early 20s, I felt like a lot of it really spoke to me, and I wish that I could have read that when I was 18, 19, 20. I felt like it really would have helped me. So I really enjoyed that. And again, it was one of those that I sailed through. I think I went through it in 2 days. It's not too long. But yeah, I really enjoyed that. I would definitely recommend that to like slightly younger people, or people who are struggling with maybe fitting in, which I think is not a thing, but who kind of feel weird and not like a part of a group, or haven't found their group yet. I know I definitely felt that way when I was younger, so I really enjoyed that. I thought it was fantastic, and it's nice because you feel like your big sister, I don't have a big sister, but if I did, you feel like your big sister is just like giving you advice and chatting through things that like we all go through, from like, she talks about everything from like kissing boys and, you know, having arguments with your parents and straightening your hair because you feel like that's what boys would like, and getting bullied and not having friends at school, and various things that most people in some shape, way or form have gone through, you know, growing up. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. So those, I think, are all of my February reads. So I read 8 books in February. There was one that I started on the 31st of January and I finished on the 2nd of February, but I was like, I don't want to include that because that would not be completely honest, because I started it in January. But yeah, so I hope you enjoyed this video. I love talking about books, and I chat to my friends about books all the time, and my mum has recently gotten really into reading. So like, if there's a book that I like that I think she'll like, I always pass that on to her, which is why I don't have Verity. If you like this video, please leave a comment below, share something with me. Like this video if you enjoyed it, if you'd like to see more stuff like this as well. And thank you for watching if you have stayed till now, till the end. You know what I mean. I will see you in the next one.